Hi, I'm Billy Hallowell, and welcome to Into the Supernatural. Today's episode is about Nigeria and persecution, but we wanted to let you know that the episode was recorded just before President Donald Trump designated Nigeria a country of particular concern. We'll get into that designation on the show today, but you want to understand that that conversation happened right before that designation, and that is a designation that puts pressure on the Nigerian government at the hands of the US government to take persecution seriously. We hope you enjoy this episode of Into the Supernatural. Well, I want to thank you for joining us here on Into the Supernatural. There's a lot to talk about today when it comes to Nigeria. This is an issue that it's made some headlines, but a lot of media outlets aren't really talking about it. For those who don't know, what is the current reality for Christians in particular who are living in the northern and central areas of Nigeria?
I think there's a lot of things that people don't know is that Christians in Nigeria, right from our independence in 1960, we have lived in one kind of level of discrimination, persecution, or government policies that are not friendly to Christians for all this while, especially for Christians in northern Nigeria. But we've learned to live with it. It's just really not been an issue. As much as we have had amazing relationship with Muslims, and of course intermarried, and a lot of things have happened. But there's this discrimination that right from after the Nigerian Civil War in 1970, unfortunately, we never healed from the Civil War that was fought on the Christian-Muslim divide between North and South. But like I said, various governments have tried to just provide what is a nation. Unfortunately, we've had a country, but we never had a nation. I would argue right from independence because of this divide. There's this phobia consistently either in the polity or in the economy of Christian domination or Muslim domination. So we've lived with that until the 19 early 200s when we now started seeing this mass movement towards radical Islamic groups. And unfortunately, of course, most northern states decided that they were going to establish, or rather, yeah, the Sharia law. Every of them now set up the Sharia law from in all the northern. So that created additional tension again. But Boko Haram came into the scene 2008, 2009, and we're here today.
You've seen this crisis firsthand, and I think a lot of people not understanding that background that you just described. Can you give us, because a lot of times when we talk about this kind of thing, we're talking sort of about numbers and statistics, and we've seen as many as 100,000 Christians being slaughtered over the last decade. We've seen other numbers that may even be higher than that. Can you share a story that captures the suffering and even the courage of some of the Christians that are on the ground there in Nigeria?
Let me say that I have been a pastor in Nigeria, and my church was attacked twice. I have gone through churches where they've been bombed, first by Boko Haram, but communities that have been attacked by Islamist Fulani militia groups. I have been personally pinned down for about 3 hours on, I would say, on the 10th of January 2010, when bullets were flying all over the place and there was this massive attack. In fact, I've been shot at by the army while I was trying to get documentation and recordings and trying to understand and get statistics of what was happening. A soldier came in his armored car, turned his gun, and fired in my direction. Thank God it was just a miracle that I survived. I've had a bunch on my head. I don't know from which other of these groups, I think for a long time now. So I've lived this. Have had a bunch on my head since about 2000, 2014 or thereabout. I can't even remember. It's just so long now because I've been in the field. So I have I have a journalist background. I've worked with the local media station for a while, and then eventually I became a stringer for CNN between 2010 and about 2016 or thereabout. So I've been in the field. I've seen firsthand. I've been to more than 200 villages that have been attacked. I've seen there's hardly any of these villages that doesn't have a mass grave. I've presided and watched over so many funerals I can't even remember. As a matter of fact, it can be so traumatic that certain times I wonder why this is just surreal in all that is happening. So it's massive. It's massive. I've been to Chibok where those schoolgirls were abducted in April 2014. I've had meetings with their families. I have, I would say, by God's mercy, again, almost ran into two Boko Haram ambushes on the way because I have been between Maiduguri and Damboa, where you drive in a road and it's all spent shells on that road for more than 2 to 3 miles. That you have to drive straight, otherwise you get a puncture and your car is left there. So I think I've virtually seen it all.
A bounty on your head. A bounty on your
Yeah,
head.
so I would say, so we were driving. I needed to visit the same village where those Chibok girls were attacked because I've been going back and forth with the families trying to see how best we can help them. But more importantly, the few of those girls that escaped, trying to also provide some kind of assistance. So I was driving my car together with two other colleagues. And when we got to a road, it split into two. It was a T junction. So I asked somebody by the road and I said, please, we are heading to Chibok. This is around Askira. And they said, and I said, do we go straight or we go left? Because we heard that 2 days before Boko Haram had attacked a village there. So the lady by the side of the road just did this sign to me. She said, don't go this way or else, you know, you'll be killed. But for some reason, I didn't want to. I didn't want to go straight where she said. So I said in my mind, I said, Lord, we're heading this way. Now I'll keep driving straight. I've had this version, but can I get someone somewhere that I could ask again to be sure that I'm making the right decision? So just as we were about driving out of the village, by my right, I noticed that there was a church. And just as I got there, the gate opened and two women were coming out of the gate, and I stopped and I said, ma'am, please, we're heading to Chibok, but we were advised to go this way because the Askira road that I wanted to follow was just attacked. And the woman paused for a minute and she said, if you go straight this road, this is about 3 p.m. You will not get to your destination till about 7 p.m. or 8, and it will be dark. You will be the only car there. You will not survive it. If I were you, I'll still go back to that same road, the Askira road that you are told not to follow. So I just did a U turn and went straight through the Askira road. Now, we got to Chibok, had all we needed to do. By the next day, I was coming back, and my host said, it is clear now you can go. That is the Biu road, which is what we wanted to follow the day before. And as we drove that road for about an hour, I was the only car on that road that afternoon at between 11 and 12 noon. Then we now came to the road went up a hill, and right in the distance, there were masked figures that blocked the road. So I drove slowly because I knew that if I did a U turn, definitely I'll be blown out of the road. Seeing the figures that were there, and a few more appeared. So as I drove close, the figure raised his hands and I stopped. And for almost 2 minutes, he didn't move and I didn't move. Then another person came and joined him, whispered something to him, and then they all disappeared. Then they came back and he motioned me forward. It was when I got up a little on the hill and I got there, then I now saw just behind him were about 15 pickup vans filled with armed men all in masks. And by my right was an armored car and they all had their guns trained on us because I was the only car coming. So I stopped again. Then somebody came, and this time around I saw it's a military officer with a name tag on his chest. So he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, we're just friends. We're coming from Chibok, and we're heading to Jos. Jos is where I live in central Nigeria." And he didn't say a word. He just simply said, and he walked away. Spoke to some other person, and then they said, "Okay, we could pass." Now, 2 minutes after we passed, the villages all behind them were already burning. So, which meant that it meant that they had engaged with Boko Haram in that community throughout the night because there were at least 6 villages that were burning, and that couldn't have happened within an hour or two. It must have happened through the night, and that was the road we would have come through if we had driven the night before.
I mean, that seems like a miracle that you encountered these people who helped you actually go the right way, and you made that change.
You know what? I've always said that was an angel because till today, there is no way I could explain the coincidence that just as I drove to the last building that was a church in that village, and the gate opened. I just can't explain it any other way.
I absolutely was thinking the same thing. I was thinking it's an angel, and I was also reminded of Elisha and his servant. I think it's Second Kings chapter 6, where he's like, "Open my servant's eyes, God." And I just believe that God must have supernaturally blinded them in a way that's not blind, like they can't see, but they can't perceive, or it's something amazing. I mean, I imagine with all of the persecution that is going on in Nigeria and all over the world, as horrific and horrible it is, and that's something we want to bring light to, so that Christians all over who are listening to our podcast can begin partnering with you for prayer. I do believe that where sin abounds, grace abounds more. And so I'm curious, I mean, being somewhere that is so spiritually awake, so aware of the supernatural, unlike the United States, where miracles don't happen as much here because it's just kind of not our culture, though they do happen. I'm wondering how often you all are fasting and praying. I mean, because I would imagine it's just so in your face, in your field of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I can tell you, Jen, that I think I'm sitting here talking to you today simply because of God's miracle, and I've seen it happen again and again and again. Like I said, I was shot at the soldier. It was a direct. This soldier looked at me in the face and opened fire. It was just a brick wall between me and the soldier there kneeling on his. He went on one knee, raised his gun, and I called my friend and I say, "Down, down, down," and we all went down. Unfortunately, my friend took the bullet in his hind, but he survived. And just as I was half dragging him, half running with him, everybody ran away when they had the gunfire. And as I was dragging him, he was bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I was having a camera on one hand and dragging him on the other hand. Then somebody came and ran past us, but the person stopped and then came back. And then he said, "Lie him on the ground." I laid him on the ground. Then he took his car key and extracted the bullet. And he said, "Don't worry, I'm a doctor." So he tore a t-shirt that I was wearing and plugged the hole. I said, "No, he's going to be okay," and he ran off.
Come on. And I'm like, do you think that that was an angel, or do you think that that was somebody who was translocating? Because that is a thing. Like in the Bible, we see Philip. Philip gets translocated, and I'm like, Billy and I haven't had anybody on the podcast yet that's translocated, but I know of people that do it where sometimes they think they're in a dream and then they realize later, like, no, in real life, while I was dreaming, my spirit was taken up, thrown into another place, and like I just was there. I did it, and they think they're dreaming, but they're really there in real life. I mean, that's amazing to me. Like, I wonder whether it was a person or an angel or what, but that was God.
Honestly, I can't say. Look, it is now, actually, I would say it's after that, on hindsight, when I sit down to ask myself, what just happened? Then I now begin to see and to think through, and I say, no, that just couldn't have been coincidence. I couldn't have just been an accident. And look, I have the amazing thing is I have footages of all this. I always carry around with my camera. So certain times I sit down and play back this and I say, is this real? And then to convince myself, I see all the jumping footages as I'm running and I'm screaming and I'm talking. Then the camera catches this shot and it passes that shot and everything. And I sit down and I say, Lord, thank you for the miracle and thank you that I'm alive. And it's not just me. I mean, there are countless of us that are there that have had amazing experiences of what the Lord has done. So it's something that we've lived through. And if anything else, I can assure you that for Christians in central and northern Nigeria, we live every day that it is this faith that keeps us going. There's no way you can explain the Bible to us. We know we just there is this we know when God is in action and when He's at work. It's not just because we've read the Bible, it's because we've lived it. And so a lot of people say, "Oh well, but you're suffering, and where is God in all this suffering? How is it that these things have happened?" And I say, "You have no idea. You have no idea that in this war zone, we see God work at work every minute and every day, and that's why we trust Him more, we love Him more, and we hold on to Him even firmer than we've ever done in our lives, despite the tragedies we see every day happening around us."
You know, recently it seems like too, and just while we're having this conversation, we want to point people to Christian Solidarity International. You can go to csi-usa.org and you can read a lot more about these issues that we're talking about in persecution in other parts of the world as well. You obviously work with CSI. But you know, I've got to ask you, it seems like in recent weeks, this problem has gotten even worse. There are images and videos coming out of Nigeria. What has been happening in the last few weeks that should really be raising alarm bells for all of us when we look at the actual facts on the ground there in Nigeria? I know you were just there.
Yeah. No, so it's just sad to hear the Nigerian government coming up vehemently to I would say to defend, deflect, and deny the genocide that is going on in central Nigeria. Because and they've done this for so many years. This is not the first time the issue of genocide has been spoken about. I think probably some of people listening or watching would may recall that the British parliamentary interparliamentary committee in 20 January, I think it was in 2020, that brought out a report talking about the genocide that was happening in Nigeria. And of course, the government did the same thing, denied it, deflected it, and made it sound like, oh, it was just nothing. These are just Christians trying to make uh, mountain out of a molehill. There's just nothing there. But it's just repeated again and again that this time around, when people have cried out a lot, we have documents, we have statistics, we have evidence in the last 6 or 7 years that I've been working, and when we realized really that the government had I think there is just this disdain and this standoffish attitude when it comes to Christian being killed in central Nigeria, particularly whether it is Plateau, Benue, Southern Kaduna, Taraba, or Adamawa states, where there are so many mass graves. The government just dismisses it as if it is nothing. Actually, they've keyed into the narrative that is more comfortable for the West, that, oh, these are just clashes caused by climate change, people fighting for economic, uh, you know, just trying to graze their cattle or things like that. And we said, no, I personally, in my recordings and in the documentations I have argued that we are dealing with a terrorist group. They are well equipped, they are properly funded, and they know clearly what they do. These are groups of people that will attack 5 villages in 6 hours and kill hundreds of people and just dissolve into the night. These are people that the Nigerian army can't even begin to confront in so many levels. And they say, oh no, it's just caused by climate change. I have, I mean, if people have the stomach, I have images of a woman, pregnant woman, who died clutching three of her children as she was burnt alive in her room at night. How on earth would she have clashed with anybody over farmland or over cattle? So when we see a systematic destruction of villages, and as I speak to you, in Plateau State alone, there are more than 150 villages that have been wiped out, and these people have called in other their kit and kin, and they are residing in those villages as I speak. So we're not talking about people we don't know. We're not talking about it's not as if they are ghosts. We know who they are. We know they are coming from. We know, at least we suspect we know who their patrons are, and some of them are in the Nigerian government. We have sympathizers in authority who are shielding and protecting, and they have become their apologists. So a village is attacked, women and children are wiped out, and then they say, "Oh, it's because it was a reprisal. Oh, because cattle were rustled, and so they came on a vengeance." And this is the government speaking on behalf of these terrorist groups. It's sad what is happening in Nigeria, really. But just to say that, like you pointed out, Billy, it's in the last couple of weeks, the government is doing whatever it can to reach out to the American Senate to put in their position, so to say, and to say, no, everybody is getting killed, including Muslims. And we're not denying that Muslims are getting killed. But you see, what the government is doing strategically is muddling up the whole thing so that it's confusing to those who are watching from outside. So they make it sound like the killing of Christians just started this year.
Well, and that's because what's happening right now in America is there's been a debate. The Trump administration had added Nigeria to the countries of particular concern list under the State Department, which indicates that this sort of thing is going on. The Biden administration came in and removed Nigeria from that list. And now we've been waiting for the Trump administration to put Nigeria back on that list again. And they're trying to prevent it because if it happens, it's going to be very bad for Nigeria. So, it's and that's a whole other part of this conversation that's important, but we'll talk about that another time. I have to ask you about evil because we're talking about here, these are structural things that are happening. They're horrific. It's terrorism. But as a pastor, how do you see this through the lens of demonic evil? Because I can't picture anything more horrific than this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's no way you can explain whichever religious ideology people are coming with. There's just no way you can explain the killing of women, the ripping up of pregnant women and killing their babies. I have met a woman who, this is in I would say in Dogonoma, is a village in southern Kaduna. They came, shot into, I mean, of course, the shooting in the community, burning the homes, and they came to this woman who was carrying a 1-year-old baby on her back. They said the only way they will not kill the woman is if the woman will eat the finger of her mother. So what they did was to chop off the woman's finger and stuff it into the baby's mouth. Of course, the baby couldn't eat that finger. So they raised the machete, struck the baby, and killed it in her back. And in that blow, she chopped off her arm. How do you even begin to explain this evil? And there's so much more we can go. Not to sound very morbid, but there's so many examples we can begin to show. That shows the satanic, drive that is pushing this. But unfortunately, I would say a lot of people don't even seem to see that this is just not normal. You cannot explain whether you'd say it is caused by climate change, or you can make excuses of attacks and reprisal or whatever it is, that you systematically go from community to community, village to village. And when you look at the statistics and the ratio, women and children are the most affected. They are the highest victims. And even when the men are killed, you therefore now have women whose lives are changed forever, because there are so many widows now with children that they can't even, where do they even begin to start living their lives with? So this is how bad it is.
It is otherworldly. Wow.
I was gonna say, you know, we need to support Christian Solidarity International and all of that. But I would also say to the listeners that a practical way you can be helping, and it really is not a cop out, is by actually praying. And I would even say fasting and praying for Nigeria, not just for our brothers and sisters in Christ, but for the people who are actually conducting these attacks, that they would be having supernatural visitations from Jesus, that they would change sides, that the government, that the Lord God himself, that Jesus himself would be revealed to these government leaders in dreams. I mean, it has happened. It is not a crazy prayer. We are seated in heavenly places, and the enemy is lower than Jesus. He is so much lower than Jesus, and he is a created being. And so I just want to urge our listeners to rally in the spirit realm and literally fast and pray for Nigeria, that there would be supernatural breakthrough, that the occult and the demonic, satanic things that are going on at a governmental and global level would literally just start, the light would start piercing through, because the light will always defeat darkness. And I just believe that Jesus is waiting on the prayers of the saints, honestly, because that is actually the authoritative system that the Lord himself has set up. He loves stepping into the impossible. So I would really urge our listeners to start praying, and please even fast for Nigeria.
Yeah. No, I love that. That is so powerful and so important. And before we go here, I just want to ask what is, in addition to everything Jen just said, what is Christian Solidarity International doing right now on the ground in Nigeria to help this crisis and the victims?
Oh, amazing, amazing things, I would say. So I will argue that in central Nigeria, I think there are just one or two, perhaps, charities that I can even think of that are even doing anything at all. But Christian Solidarity International has been there in the last 15 years, you know, walking through with people, helping communities, provide emergencies. going families scholarship for kids who have lost everything, and providing medical, I would say, the bills, paying off the medical bills for those that have life-changing injuries, getting prosthetics for those that have lost limbs. A lot is going on. And like Jen said, I mean, it will be incredibly important. Whatever assistance Christian Solidarity International (CSI) can get, because the work is really, really massive. Because if you look at the hundreds of thousands of people that are still in refugee camps, by the way, and the work is both in Borno State, in northeastern Nigeria, where is the epicenter of Boko Haram, all the way down to central Nigeria, whether you say it's Plateau, Benue State, where a lot of Christian families are going. They're waking every day not knowing where the next meal will come from. So there's a lot that CSI is doing. And in addition to prayers, we would say whatever, nothing really is too small, because $10, $20 is life changing for somebody there who can't even go to the hospital. I just came back from Nigeria, like I said, and so it was last week. One of the villages in Haipang is called was attacked, and 13 people were killed in that village. But the thing was, one of the men was shot, and while he was bleeding to death, his friend just quickly took him on a motorbike and was trying to run away, run to a medical facility. But they all ran into an ambush, and both of them were killed. Now, what CSI has been trying to do is build the medical, well, provide some kind of expertise in training somebody in at least in every village, so that they become first responders. Once there's an attack, they're able to meet the persons immediately, not just first aid, but we're talking about training people to extract bullets, so wounds that are machete cut and things like that before the person will be taken to the next facility. Providing medical backpacks, for instance, in that community, so that somebody is mobile enough to move and do something immediately. So these are all the things that CSI is working on doing in some of those communities. And a bandage here, gauze here, some spirits, methylated spirit, anything that our listeners, our viewers can give will be amazing. It will be very, very helpful.
Well, and that is, a very powerful way for us to end this, through prayer and giving. Jen, any final words from you?
No, I'm just going to say to our listeners, we're going to put the links. They will be in the YouTube videos, in our podcast, so that you can go and give to Christian Solidarity International while you're listening, hopefully, or definitely after. But let's show love in action. I mean, faith is love in action. That's just what James says.
Well, I love that. And we thank you so much for joining us today. Again, you can go to csi-usa.org. Thank you so much.